So we're looking at Isaiah chapter 9 and the first few verses which we read earlier. Now, it's not a surprising thing to say that poverty and Christmas go hand in hand. You know, it's reality. We often think about poverty when we think about Christmas. Now, I wonder sometimes whether there's that happens and people on the outside think, well, is that because Christians want us to feel bad about enjoyment, about Christmas spending or relaxation? Is it because we always need reminding that some people are worse off or more worse off than us? It's to bring us down. Well, that isn't the case. I think it's more that, you know, there are realities. We do need to watch the cash and the cards, especially this year. We should always be thankful for our blessings. But I think one of the main reasons that poverty and Christmas go hand in hand is because they're not arbitrarily put together. Poverty and Christmas are part of the Christmas story. They go together. You've got Joseph and Mary searching for somewhere to stay in Bethlehem and not being able to find any. We've got baby Jesus placed in a feeding trough. We've got his earthly parents bringing the poor person's sacrifice at the temple. They escape to Egypt. They have refugee status. And these people are part of the prophecy. See, poverty and Christmas do go together. Now, we read from the book of Isaiah, which is about 750 years before Jesus was born. And Isaiah was speaking to a nation who are turning against God. And Isaiah's message is judgment that they deserve. They're going to lose everything. But in the middle of this judgment, there is light. There is hope. The spiritual poverty of this nation can be turned around. There is a future for them. And this future is in this child, in this son who is given. The first thing I want us to think about is this. Jesus brings joy. Jesus brings joy. You know, it's this time of year that nights draw in quickly. And there's something about darkness, isn't there? It often doesn't feel nice. It feels oppressive. It feels perhaps dangerous. The people of Isaiah's day are in darkness. It doesn't mean that there is no sun, but their situation is dark. So, verse 1, we find that these people are in anguish and contempt. They're under burden. There's weight. There's oppression. It's a bad situation. That's the truth. We often talk about the truth, don't we? We want people to tell us the truth. But of course, the truth is often skirted over, isn't it? You know, if you look back in our history, details of World War I were kept from the people back home. You know, what was going on in the trenches was kept from them. It's only when the soldiers returned that the truth was told. And it was completely different to how it had been portrayed to those back home. But this is the situation for Israel. It's dark. They've had godless kings who have brought trouble. There are enemies about to pounce. Yet, there is light coming. Light that shines. Light that brings joy. And this joy is like when all your efforts are rewarded. It's joy like when you are victorious and you've won the victory. It brings joy because the burden, the weight that they are under, has been broken. Imagine that you are under a great weight. Perhaps a tree traps you, or a wardrobe falls on top of you. Or perhaps you've picked a fight with a very heavy person and they've sat on you. But the moment of release, when the tree is moved or the wardrobe is yanked off you or that person gets up, that moment of release is, yes, that's better. The weight has gone. Jesus came to remove the burden of our sin, to take the rod of oppression on our behalf. He comes into the darkness of our situations and he shines his light. And he says to us, I died for that pride. I'll carry the worry that you have over your debts. I'll take the accusations of Satan. Follow me and you'll have the light of life. And that's why Jesus brings joy. Jesus defeats the darkness. Jesus takes the burden on himself. Jesus is the child who breaks the power of sin and death. See, Jesus brings joy. But secondly, Jesus also brings peace. Jesus brings peace. One of the realities of our world is that there is conflicts and there's wars, and we long for peace between warring nations and warring factions. And will there ever be any? Well, Isaiah in his prophecy looks back to the time of Solomon, where it did all go wrong. It was peaceful then. There were glory days, but it went wrong because they followed darkness. Israel rejected her God. And now there are invaders on the horizon. The Assyrian army is on the march. The northern tribes are going to be captured and conquered. The southern kingdom of Judah is in danger. Will there be peace? There will be peace. You know, we look around conflicts in our world, you know, the reality is peace agreements come because certain big characters make it happen and enforce it. In my lifetime, it's happened in South Africa. F.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela, big characters, and they made it happen. You know, when I was working, Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat brokered a peace deal, and it held until Rabin was assassinated. You know, big characters making it happen. Here, there is one big character, and it's God's Son, Jesus. And we read in verse 6 that he comes as the wonderful counselor. He comes as the mighty God. He comes as the everlasting Father. He comes as the Prince of Peace. See, he makes wise plans. He is all powerful. He is the protector of his own forever. He rules justly. He doesn't rule as a despot, as a tyrant, but as one whose rule and peace will never end. There's a story we used to read to our children, and it was called Peace at Last. And Daddy Bear, at home in the Bear household, can't sleep because of all the noises at night, both inside the house and outside the house. And he tries every different room in the house, and then he goes outside. Eventually he returns to his bed and says, "Peace at last." At which point his wife's alarm clock goes off as it's morning. You know, is there really going to be peace and rest? Is it really going to happen? Or is it like the children's story? It's a nice idea, it's what we want, but it won't happen. But it can happen because Jesus is King, and that's the final thing I want us to think about tonight. Jesus is King. Sometimes the phrase is used, "I carried them," and it's often to do with sport. Diego Maradona, the Argentinian footballer, died recently. And, you know, it's said, and it's true, if you watched him playing for Argentina, he carried the team. He carried that team on his shoulders. And that's how they became world champions in 1986. In an even greater way, Jesus carries world governments on his shoulder. He walks into the world with all earthly rule relying on him, the King. But how can a child carry the different presidents and prime ministers, monarchs of our world? Well, he can, because Jesus is the King whose kingdom is not of this world. His kingdom is forever. And that's why he can multiply the nations. He carries the nation and he adds to it, he expands it, just like a bumper harvest. And that's why this part of Isaiah's book is not downcast. It is all about joy increasing. It is all about peace increasing. It is all about human beings being relieved from the burden of sin by Jesus, who loves them and gave himself for them. It's all about a king who enters our darkness and shame and lifts us into the light and justification, being made right by God. And that means at this time of Christmas, we can rejoice in Jesus. He is the King of all. And he is the one who brings joy. And he brings peace. And he brings it forever. So let me ask you a question. Are you rejoicing in Jesus the King this Christmas? This Jesus who brings joy and peace. The Son who was given. Or was he given for you? Perhaps you feel a bit like Paloma Faith in her song Broken Doll. I don't claim to be perfect, she sings. I know I am damaged goods, but I want to be let out of darkness. Jesus came to let you out of the darkness. He came to deal with that darkness. Jesus knows you're not perfect, just like me. Jesus knows that all of us, every single one of us, are damaged goods, all of us. But that is why he came, to bring us into the light of salvation, knowing God as our Father, knowing Jesus as Saviour and King. We're going to sing a final carol to finish. So if you'd like to get ready to sing as we finish our time together.